Episode 13.5. Welcome to the Grand Central Sports Hub. From the dungeon in Dumont, Seth Cantor with you, down in the heart of Texas. It's JZ, Jason Zabransky. Good evening. How are you, good sir?
I'm not happy.
Baseball.
You know, this is part of the show where we do our pleasantries. We sound excited to see each other. And don't get me wrong, Seth. I'm excited to see you tonight and to talk to you and everyone else out there. But I'm not happy.
Tell me why you're not happy. I wonder why you're not happy. I wonder what baseball has done to make you unhappy.
They're fighting, as of today, and as of this moment, they're fighting over 10 games. 10 goddamn baseball games. Do you want 60 games or 70 games? They're fighting over 10 games.
So I've had enough of it. Especially with the tweet that John Heyman came out and had about 5 minutes ago saying baseball owners are so upset by the players' counterproposal, which is set for about $300 million more, that no response. They're so hurt by the proposal that no response is expected to be immediate. Time is obviously getting short, so hopefully it's not too long. I am done with baseball. Done. Baseball is like the girlfriend that treats you badly, and when she gives you some hope that she's going to change, she says, jump, you say, how high. That's what baseball is to me right now. With the range of emotions
Speaking from personal experience.
Yes, speaking from personal experience. The range of emotions that I've had this week from Rob Manfred, which was a bad negotiating tactic to me from an owner's point of view, coming out and saying that, well, I'm not sure we're going to have a season now. Then Manfred coming out, posturing yesterday, saying, well, technically we agree in principle on the framework of a deal. Then the union coming out and striking that down. My phone blew up yesterday at 2:30. You and I are talking. Phones are blowing up at 2:30. You and I are saying, well, they don't quite have a deal yet, but I'm saying they're going to get a deal done. It's happening. They're going to get a deal done at the end of the day. I believe the line that I had for you was, we're going to have baseball. And you told me to pump the brakes just a little bit because I thought a deal would be done by the end of the day yesterday. A deal wasn't done by the end of the day yesterday. You said it was going to take a couple of days. Major League Baseball, the union, they can't get their act together. And I'm finished. Call me when you have a deal. We're going to have basketball, hopefully, although I'm not convinced that the NBA is going to play just yet. I'm not convinced because there's some star power. There's some players who have some pretty good clout in the NBA coming out now and saying that they're not in favor of this Orlando plan.
The NBA has a real commissioner, though, and they, if they would have announced it if they didn't have it going, right?
Yeah. I'm not convinced we're going to see basketball, but I do think we're going to see hockey. There are other options out there right now. Baseball is not the only game in town.
Yeah, but here's the problem. I'm sorry. Here's the problem. I did say, hey, I think we're going to get a road bump, and it's going to drag out till Thursday or Friday. But I didn't think it was going to be like this. It's like Manfred is like we pretty much saying last night, we have a deal. We agreed on it. We want the owners to sign off on it. And the PA is like, oh, you're crazy. I mean, every moment you think something's getting better, they go like to the next level of freaking nonsense.
Manfred, to me, what
awful.
Manfred is doing, okay, it's like he's reading. Jeffrey Gitomer is a sales trader. I read his books back in 2006 when I was just breaking into the sales industry. I wanted to learn how to be a good salesman. So I aligned myself with some good people when I worked at CBS Radio, selling for the Soccer Mom station at the time, Fresh 102.7 FM. I aligned myself with some positive people. I learned how to negotiate because I'd never been in sales before. All right. I read some books from a guy by the name of Jeffrey Gitomer, who's a sales trainer. It wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't, let's say, the senior level class in college. It was negotiating 101. The way Rob Manfred is negotiating with the players, it's like he just read a sales training book the other day, and he's completely overmatched by the union. Completely. This is a guy that doesn't know what he's up against in the players' union. And I told you before, and I'll say it again, there is going to be a significant work stoppage. You are not going to see baseball in 2022. And if baseball doesn't come back this year, you know what? With a strike looming, lockout, whatever it is, don't come back next year. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see a season next year and then have it go in the toilet the following year. I don't want to see it. I'm tired of it. I'm disgusted with it. I'm tired with it. The only thing is, my first reaction today when I saw the players' counter proposal, I was frustrated and I swore baseball off. But then I put my sales hat on. I put my negotiating hat on. And I've done sponsorship deals. I won't name the clients, but I've done sponsorship deals like $300,000 or so over a 3-year span. Probably the top sponsorship deal that I've had. And those deals can take 2 or 3 months. This is far more complicated, and this is far more complex. My gut feeling is players are at 70, Major League Baseball's at 60. They're going to figure out they're going to get a deal done at 65. But the way they're getting there to me is a complete turnoff.
Here's the problem, and I hope your wall doesn't fall down. It knows we're angry. Here's the problem. It's how it's being done, Seth. How come yesterday was the first day that Rob Manfred and Tony Clark met in person? And don't tell me COVID-19 is the reason why, because it's not. So how come yesterday's the first day they meet in person and magically things start taking shape, right? But here's my problem. The posturing in the media and the use of social media and how both these sides twist and turn things and for image and optics. Guys, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Lock yourself in a room, come out tomorrow, and have an agreement. It is absolutely ridiculous of the stuff that gets put on media, so we have to deal with this, and I have to drink whiskey on a Thursday night.
Yeah. They get a deal done as my wall comes crumbling down. Look at this.
Oh, my God, what happened? What's going on? What's that?
We're not having an earthquake in Dumont, I can assure you of that.
What just happened?
So
did the cat just jump on the wall? What happened?
It's amazing. So I bought this foam padding, not really for this show, but for my series reports. It came down again. Oh my heavens!
Dumont is crumbling. It's not going to be. Hey,
pretty soon I'm gonna have to crawl under the desk like an air raid drill. Remember when we were in elementary school?
Yeah.
You had to dive under the desk for air raid drills?
Because if the Soviets bombed us while we were in second grade, our desk was really going to save our life.
But we were at the very end of the Cold War. And I remember, I don't know how we went from talking about baseball to talking about air raid drills, but we were at the very end of the Cold War. And I remember in Mrs. Kennedy's kindergarten class, you and I were in that class together. Yeah. That's where we met. And then Mrs. Coletti's first grade class, we still did air raid drills.
I know. I remember.
So here, this is the deal. Baseball is going to get a deal done, but the way they're getting there is a complete turnoff. But here's the thing, and this is the problem. Here's the thing. They know that people like you and me on a Wednesday night, when we get home from work, 7 o'clock, what else are we doing? We're going to turn on the Yankees and watch the Yankees. They know that. And they toy with our emotions every single time. They do. But like I said, the guy on the bread line, and there are people that are still waiting for unemployment checks, people taking their kids to food pantries because they don't have anything in their house to eat. They don't care about this. It doesn't matter to them.
And you would think that they would be working toward the fan, because when fans are allowed back in, they need us to buy tickets.
Yeah.
Right? The owners need us to buy tickets, Seth. And quite frankly, as much as I love baseball, I'm going to have a decision next year, hopefully when the sports are playing. Where am I going to spend my money? Do I want to spend it with hockey, with baseball? Where do I want to spend it? Football? I can't spend it in all 4 sports. It just can't,
Well, listen, you know what? Baseball knows guys like me are going on benders, buying 47 brand hats, getting 9 or 10 of them shipped during coronavirus, and I still wear them every single day.
I mean, your hat. Why aren't you wearing one tonight? First of all, you have 2,500 hats.
So here's the problem. This is the issue that I've pinned myself into with all these different hats.
And you got a haircut.
I did get a haircut. The mullet's gone. A lawnmower did not run over my head. I actually went through a barbershop legally, and I got my haircut. But this is the problem that baseball has. Baseball knows that guys like me are going to buy merchandise. They know that you're going to watch the games, and ultimately that's where they're going to get their revenue from. Anyway, one more thing on this. 16 teams, to me, 16 playoff teams is watered down. But you know what? You look at the NBA, 16 out of 30 teams make it. The NHL, 16 out of 31 teams make it. The NFL, it's now 14 out of 32. That's the trend.
I don't care. It's fine.
Expanded play. It's just, to me, it waters it down.
It does. It waters it down, but it's going to have to happen for revenue. And whatever. I don't care.
You're fine with it.
Okay.
You're fine with it.
In the scheme of things, okay. If this was a normal negotiation and things weren't the way they were, I'd probably feel differently about it. At this point, just put 16 teams in the playoffs. It's going to be the thing. They want it. It's a big money thing. I don't care.
Well, it's not the hold up to a deal, and it means more revenue for the players. So I understand that, and the owners, of course. Hey, we have a real live baseball scout joining us tonight. Awesome. A real live baseball scout. His name is Kevin Tuve. Started his career with the Mariners, and now he's the director of player development for the New York Boulders. I work with him, and we're going to bring him in now. Kevin, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Kevin, where do you stand on Major League Baseball and what's happening right now?
Well, 24 hours ago, I was kind of all right, thinking, what, we're gonna get to see some baseball, 60 games, we can deal with it. The offer goes in for 70, and as you fellas know what happened today, it's back to where we were 24 hours ago. I don't know. I think there's going to be baseball. They say there'll be 50 games as a fallback, but it's really it's depressing and it's disheartening on both sides. The billionaires versus millionaires. How do you feel sorry for either one right now?
Yeah, you don't.
It's true. All right. I'm going to start with a loaded question. For you because I'm always impressed with the work you do. You're one of the most organized people I know, and you read talent very well. How do you know, as a scout, a player has it?
I think first off, the easy part of that is you look at Baseball Reference. The easy part of that is you look and see what he did, in A ball and up. Anything before that is really hard to judge. The Gulf Coast leagues and the rookie Arizona leagues are really low, and it's hard to really tabulate that into what we see in the Can-Am, Frontier, American Association, etc. So I think that's the first part of it, is looking the numbers up, because that's gonna really take a large number of the sample and push it right out of the equation. And then the second is you really got to see him with your own eyes. John Burns, who you and I well know, really taught me just about everything that I've learned doing this a decade now, which is crazy. And his big thing was look at your, see what you see and let your eyes tell the story before someone else tells you. So I think the old school way, before you take any of these sabermetric stats, is personally, I think it's what you see, with your own eyes.
What drew you to scouting? I'm always fascinated about the story of how you got into it. I know our listeners would be too.
Well, it kind of happened really by accident, Seth. You probably remember the story, but June of 2010, met up with a local guy in Rockland named Bob Seaman, who, went on to sort of be the owner, yet the money guy of the Pittsfield Colonials, the dreaded Colonials, who lasted all but 2 years, kind of like the Seattle Pilots, for someone listening here that could envision the team that just was gone before it started, and that was with the Colonials. So what drew me to it was Bob gave me an opportunity. Supposedly I was going to be a general manager, which hasn't happened yet. Still waiting for that. But that was the idea from Bob, that I was going to be making player moves, and that he felt that I would be able to step in and help out this independent team in the Can-Am League.
Jason?
So we have a question from one of our listeners here, Tom Vislaki. So what is the toughest thing of being a scout?
Toughest thing for being a scout is putting your name on the player, putting your name and saying to the manager, this guy could come in and do the job. I've been burned on that many times as I've been patted on the back, if you will. In Pittsfield, I learned real quick, in 2010 and 11, that you're putting your name on players that you think are going to come in and do something. They get there, they fail, and they're gone before you blink. In independent ball, as Seth, you know that firsthand, seeing that in years and years of professional baseball. And that's the hardest part, I think, is putting your name on it and saying, yeah, I think he could do it, because then you're kind of at risk, for your word,
I think baseball might be the hardest sport to scout because the game is so different from college to professional. And there's so many levels of minor leagues before someone impacts a team. If you get drafted by the NFL or the NBA, I mean, your path is so much faster, right?
That's true.
The skills translate differently. So for baseball, how does that all happen? Like you got to pass 3-4 levels of minors to get to the majors. How do you think about that?
Well, the big mark is AA. AA is where the top talent is today, where it's been the last maybe 10 years. Years ago was if you got to AAA. I remember as a kid thinking about that, the Columbus Clippers. If you got to AAA before you got to New York, if you were talking about the Yankees, for example, well, then you really did something, which is true. But AA is really where the top players are, and that's where the studs are. And if you see a guy excel pitching-wise or a position player, at AA, you can bet that he has a good chance to get there. Anything before that is just really hard to tell. Even for independent ball, it's hard to tell if they're going to be successful.
We're joined by Kevin Tuve, the Director of Player Development for the New York Boulders. You touched on something before. How do you have that conversation with the manager? You found a guy that you think can help the team. How do you go into that meeting and have that conversation with the manager?
It's something that I've done so many times over the last 10 years, and many times it's shot down. It never gets out of that office. A lot of times, looking back, I've worked with really 4 managers. Brian Dahlback, who had been with the Red Sox, Mets, Marlins, replacement player, if you want to go back and take a look at him. Jamie Keefe, who had also been in Rockland and as in Pittsfield, Dave LaPointe, and Kevin Baez now. I think the biggest thing with that, that's a really good question there is you present him with options. And I think it's really the less amount of options, the least amount of options that you give the manager, the better it is. I used to think they were walking think tanks and they were going to remember. They don't. They remember they remember a couple names and the guy that you push the guy that you really think it's worth the phone call. And then you're on the line, because if the guy really flat out stinks, you do lose some credibility over time. You really do.
Jason?
So with all the stats available now, advanced stats, and it's gotten wild. How has that changed the business?
It's changed the business big time. It's funny. I bring in interns every year, and the last 3 or 4 years, everything has been, when they send me their resume, their cover letter type thing, it's all sabermetrics. That's all they're talking about. That seems to be the quickest way, to get from a New York Boulders, New Jersey Jackals up to an affiliated. And we've had guys do that. We have a few right now working in organizations, Tampa Bay, a few that came from the one from the Yankees, that came from the Boulders. So I think the whole idea is taking a look. I don't look at a lot at sabermetrics. I'm going to be honest. I really don't. The managers don't. Of the 4, not one of them did. And the last 2 that I was with, Jamie and now Kevin Baez, really, they're kind of old school. They really don't look at that stuff as much as a lot of people would think they do.
We're joined by Kevin Tuve, the Director of Player Development for the New York Boulders. So there are a lot of people that come to games and they see you sitting behind home plate with the radar gun and they think, oh, that's a cool job. He sits there and looks at the pitch speed, but you're doing so much more. What is it that you do? Because I've seen you go through it. It's really impressive. What is it that you do over the course of those 9 innings?
Well, there's a couple things, Seth. First off, the thing is we prepare scouting reports on every batter that we face. Now, granted, normal Frontier League season, you have 13 other teams you're facing. The scouting reports are going to, for a full year, say next year, they're going to come in handy a little bit more. But what we do is we go through the iScore program and we kind of put together a scouting report on all the pitchers, what they do against us, what pitch they hit, what the speed was. More than just the stats. I keep the book just to keep the book. I've been doing that for 10 years, ever since I've been sitting there. I do that for my own, sanity, my own fun, just like to do it as well as a lot of people do it. But we keep the I-score thing and we print it out. We make scouting booklets of everybody that we face. The other thing we do is we organize the famous database. The idea of, a second baseman goes down, we should have somebody that we could call that could be there technically the next day or two. That's really what I've been honed to do over the last 5 to 10 years, more now than ever, because it's, teams want to save money. They want to have players that are local. They don't want to have somebody who's in Idaho who's waiting for a flight. Those days are kind of gone. They're looking for guys who can be there, whoever can be there faster. And the more you have going for you, the better, the cheaper it is, and the better idea it is for us to bring that player in. So the database, in my opinion, is more important than any of the stats, really.
Interesting. This is fascinating stuff, Seth, because the game has evolved so much with what's available now, with technology and everything. You mentioned earlier that AA is really important now, and I guess Aaron wants to know why AA is being thought of as the big thing as opposed to AAA in the past.
AA is really where you put your stud players. AAA is where you have what you call your 4A players, the players that that have been around. The old cup of coffee comment, from years ago. They would say he was up for a short spell and he's back. They're insurance policies. You have your backup players at AAA. If you go to, I've been to a number of AAA games. I've been to a ton of AA games. You'll see the difference. Example, Aaron Judge or a guy like that on the way up they could pull him right from AA and put him in New York. You never saw that years ago. They don't have to go to AAA first anymore. Those days are long over. Their investments, their better players are always going to be there. That's where the competition stiffens. That's where the rehab stints really. A lot of times I've seen that. A lot of, guys at AA really, if they can hit that pitching, they're probably going to be all right. AAA has been like a scrap heap lately, the last 10 years. If you look at it, it's guys that you may never even see, or September call-ups when they had that. But they're never the guys, for a long period of time that are the ones you've invested that much money in.
It's like for the Yankees, it's a Tyler Wade, right? It's like with the expanded bench this year, if they play, Tyler Wade's going to make the team. But he otherwise, I don't know. He's a great call-up. He can do some stuff good.
Exactly.
And maybe he's a fringe guy, so AAA is perfect for him.
And during the year, that's where Brian Cashman or whoever the GM is, that's what they're adding. Most of the time, they're not adding guys to AA unless there's a big deal. They're adding guys to AAA as insurance policy. Yeah. Somebody gets hurt, they can quickly call up, player X. We don't have that luxury. So many times we'll use the Pecos League in Texas and New Mexico, or some of the other leagues that are going on. In the past, they'll have guys that will say, "Hey, keep us posted. If we can grab them, we'll bring them up." And we've done that a couple of times, definitely over the years in Rockland.
So, Kevin, you and I have been at this a while at independent ball, and we both know that there's no job description in independent ball. What are some of the things, if you could think of a couple of stories over the years, that you've had to do that have absolutely nothing to do with scouting and player development?
Really strange things. Pittsfield one time, my job was to pick up the paychecks and get them to the players, because after about 5 or 6 checks, the rest bounced. So I had to get them there. The money was an issue both years in Pittsfield. So I remember one Friday getting them really fast, and the players it was like hungry wolves, grabbing them out of my hands to get into their car, drive to the bank there in Pittsfield, on some street corner, just to get there and get theirs cashed to be able to get money before. I had 6 checks actually bounce at Pittsfield in one season. So to see what those guys did, I was talking to, I mentioned John Burns. He scouted for the Cleveland Indians for years. He was the first guy I bumped into in 2010 in Montclair, sitting there. And, ever since I picked his brain one day, and to this day, we're still talking about it. We did yesterday. And some of the stuff that I've told Seth over the years in Pittsfield that went on, people really still, 10 years later, shake their head and say, how in the world could that have happened? And how did they lose cable TV because nobody paid the bill? How did they lose hotels? The stories I have are really silly, but fun to look back on.
Hey, Seth, I wonder what your scouting report would have been around for Champion Day Camp circa 1994.
Yeah, we should have had Kevin there for that.
Oh, my God.
So Kevin brings up Pittsfield, Wacona Park, which is over 100 years old, Jason. I'm talking wooden grandstands, sun delays. I mean, because they had to stop the game. They had to stop the game, though, between about 7:30 and 8 o'clock, Kevin, right? Because the sun was setting in center field.
Yeah, the only park in professional baseball with sun delays. And if you talk to anybody, and I have tryouts, the weirdest times with the Boulders that I bumped into somebody who was there, who played there, the first thing they say is that's the park with the sun delays. If I had a nickel for every time, I mean, and that's dead true. They stopped the game for 20 minutes. The way the thing was built in 1919, as Seth said, literally over 100. And the way the roof was built, I mean, it's impossible with the glare for these guys to see the ball. That was scratching the surface with that place of what the stuff that I saw and dealt with on a given weekday. I was there all day. I mean, a weekday or night was ridiculous.
Didn't you tell me one time that the wind knocked over the fence in a storm?
Yeah, it did. There was this horrible thunderstorm up in the Berkshires. Now, understand, there used to be a team called the Berkshire Black Bears, which was a massive failure. I mean, they were in the Northern League with the Jackals, with Winnipeg, the Albany Diamond Dogs, teams of that nature, if you look back at the old Northern League. And I think Quebec and the Jackals are the only two that are still around. Somebody will correct me, but I think those are the only two that still exist from the old Northern League. In any event, the fence blows down, and I'm watching the podcast on not the podcast, but the team being, how shall I say it, broadcast on the website, whatever. And I noticed the thing goes blank, and I text, and the fence literally blew down in right field, and there was no way they could continue. I mean, after the rain stopped, I mean, the tarp was something out of Major League. I mean, nothing went right there. Everything was a disaster. The players did their own grounds crew. There was one guy doing grounds crew. And I remember explaining to Bob Seaman at the time, who was the acting owner, and I said, Bob, they're not playing this game. It's suspended. And I couldn't explain it to him enough, and he refused to accept that they couldn't play this game. And I said, Bob, let's put it this way. There's no right field. I mean, there's nothing there. And Bob said, we're playing this game. I don't understand this was a midsummer game, fellas. This was nothing, no playoffs, nothing. This was like I'm going to say mid-July. That's the best part of it. Nothing made sense. But you saw things that you learned. I learned a ton, but there was a lot of times I scratched my head and asked myself what the hell I'm doing up there. There was a lot of times.
I tell you, this is a great stories though, but this is pure baseball. Aaron had another question for you. Aaron Glasser wants to know if Major League Baseball can learn anything from minor league baseball. A lot of times we have rules being tested out and ideas. So is there anything you've seen that we should be bringing into the majors?
Well, I can tell you first something we shouldn't be bringing into the majors, and that's TrackMan. I watched that in the Atlantic League in Long Island. And
what's TrackMan? Is that the umpire system?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll start real quick with that. Saw that. It's the most bizarre thing if you've never seen it, where the umpire literally, as you guys know, has no control over balls and strikes. He's literally waiting for a play at the plate, to be honest with you. I actually saw during a game, Long Island Ducks, High Point Rockers, Atlantic League, a few times last year, and I actually saw the umpire apologize to one of the batters before he called a strike. Okay. The players look up at the satellite, the TrackMan device, and they're screaming at it in Spanish. I mean, they're yelling at the thing. I mean, the fact is, it's so unnatural. So to answer Aaron's question, which I'm definitely going to do now, so that is one thing I hope never gets to, but I think it's coming.
Can I tell you though, just on the automation part of the game, we all joke about it. Seth, we joke about it, the missed calls and stuff. But honestly, I miss a good old argument over a missed call. Instant replay is killing me. How much it's used, how long it takes to slow the game down. I'm glad they get calls right, but it takes so long, and it kills the game, and it goes against all the speed-up ideas that Rob Manfred likes to talk about. but
Right.
I could do without automated balls and strikes. Anyway, carry on. Sorry.
So that on the other side, I think the whole, the idea, minor league baseball still, and it's sad. It's funny that this question comes up because it's sad to see what, with the extraction, all these teams are going. I mean, we're losing a lot of minor league teams. If you guys know this, I know Seth knows it too. Going forward into next year, we're losing a lot. And it's a money thing, but the sad thing is this is how baseball stays in the community. You saw Bull Durham. You see that idea that the minor league team is almost like a college atmosphere, and it introduces a lot of people to the game. So basically, I would say one of the lessons to really bring in is the idea of don't lose the game. Like you said about the argument, that was part of the game growing up. That is part of the game, I think, and it is an imperfect game. I mean, that's the whole idea of baseball, is that it's not a perfect game. Guys blow calls, and I think that the instant replay was a great idea in the beginning, and then, as you said, it became so drawn out and ridiculous that it's just not needed in a game that isn't timed. I don't think it belongs.
I remember with instant replay, the only way they used it in the beginning were fair or foul calls on home runs, and then it ballooned into everything that it is right now.
But
Jason,
Seth,
I'm not sure. Go ahead.
No, I'm fine on safe out calls too, honestly. But if you put a time limit on it and say if you can't determine the call in 2 minutes or less, the call stands. They gotta put something in there. We can't do this.
Yeah, it's silly. It's silly, and it delay. And this is why the younger generation complains that baseball's too long. I teach high school. I hear it all the time. They're all looking for a time sport that is over in an hour and 15 minutes, and they walk away. As you gentlemen both know, and Aaron knows, he's a baseball guy here, and everybody knows that there's no time limit. So Seth will tell you, we're sitting there on some of the muggiest, most humid nights that New Jersey, New York could give you. We've all had them. The All-Star break last year that we happen to have was like 93 with the humidity. It felt like you were in Miami. And you have nights like that, and then those are the days where it goes, 4 hours, 3.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I agree with you. There's no place for that. I think they got to make adjustments to that, definitely, no doubt.
Kevin, take me through the tryout process, because I'm always impressed, Jason. Kevin runs the Boulders tryouts, and he does about 4 or 5 per year. He has invite-only tryouts, regional tryouts, college tryouts. Take me through the process of arranging tryouts and getting the best talent that the country has to offer into Palisades Credit Union Park. How do you do it all?
Well, first of all, you have to really suspend the whole idea that your job, and you know this better than I do, 9 to 5, it's not going to happen. I get texts in the middle of the night. I get emails. I get calls. I get WhatsApps from the Dominican, from the everywhere you could possibly imagine, except for like Cuba. All right. And so you really have to be willing to email, message, get back to guys as soon as you can, because they have other guys who have other guys, and it keeps going, of players that you may see. And it's the friend of a friend that comes here and actually makes the team. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to start early in reaching out to these guys. You need to hit not only coaches, but the social media platforms of LinkedIn, Twitter. You need to find guys out there and beat the bushes for them. College coaches who have a friend who know people. I mean, you could, if you do it right in a couple months, we have one of our good tryouts. If we do it wrong, and I do what I did one of them last year and leave it to interns, young kids to do it, you could see what's all wrong about a tryout. So I was pretty much ready this year before the pandemic to take this on myself and go at it really as hard as I did in the last 2 years, 2-3 years ago, where we had 115 guys show up. To get that, you really have to start and get after this. It takes 3-4 months. No doubt about that.
And what's amazing about these tryouts is that you have about 100 kids that show up, and maybe the manager could have been Jamie, Kevin Baez, Dave LaPointe when you worked with him. Maybe they take 1 or 2 guys, but they're traveling from far and wide just to get a shot.
And those are the best stories ever. I don't know where to start, but starting in Pittsfield, when I started doing that, I did one in 2010. You had guys driving from Cleveland, sleeping in the car in the parking lot. And in Pittsfield, there's no way I'm doing that. Pomona is a safe area there by the ballpark. It's the friendly confines, as I always think of it. When you look at Pittsfield, and there's really to clean it up. Really dangerous places to the left where GE used to be, to the left of that ballpark. And some real rugged. There's some drug infested neighborhoods, really tough areas. You don't want to be doing that, but guys did it, Seth. They did. They come from all over. They flew in, took 2 planes from the DR to get here. Drove from Texas. I've had guys drive from Texas, Iowa, anywhere you can imagine, Georgia. And I've had them come like 2 days and get there too early and then call me in the middle of a school day and say, what do I do now? I'm 2 days early. How do you answer that? I even had a guy, I'll tell you this, I even had a guy leave his wallet and came to New York first time, left his wallet in Grand Central Station and never saw it again. And called me up in the middle of the school day again. What do I do? My money's gone. I need a ride. We've had it all.
You know what? You just mentioned a couple places. So I got to ask, do you have a favorite place to look for talent in the country?
The best place, Florida and California, and Texas, I would say, are the best baseball-wise places.
Warm weather cities that are densely populated.
No doubt about it. California is really tough now to get players. A lot of the indie leagues have steered away. There's a weird law in the books to make it to keep it easy, and basically there's no statute of limitations on injury at workplace. So a lot of teams don't grab guys from California as much because they could turn around 10 years later and say, ow, my arm hurts. And it happened with the Boulders. But on the positive side, yes, Florida and Texas, no doubt about it, loaded with talent. Loaded. No doubt.
You mentioned Brian Dahlback before, who had a very respectable major league career. Dave LaPointe won a World Series with the Cardinals. What are some of the things that you've learned just by being around these managers?
Brian Dahlback, I learned the most maybe because it was the first time I was involved, and I realized how much I had no idea and how out of it I was the first 2 months. I literally had no clue what I was doing. I think I learned a lot about what players can do. And you mentioned, you had a really good question that you said before, you guys asked before about, the levels in the minor leagues and AA and stuff. And that's really where I learned in Pittsfield, where I thought players were going to be better than they were. Okay. And then when they came to Pittsfield and they did nothing and they were released before I even got back up there, I tried to get up there every week for a couple days and find a place I could stay, which is a whole nother story. But I think I learned a lot from Jamie Keefe. I was with the longest. I mean, I learned a lot from Jamie and from his contacts. And we had scouts in Rockland all the time would come in and hang out with us and talk. Seattle Mariners guys, Diamondbacks, different teams, Red Sox. Louis Tion came once and hung out with us, and he's sitting there talking baseball from the 70s. I mean, you never knew who was going to drop in. So it was really a really interesting decade so far. But I to answer your question, I would say the most valuable thing that I learned was, really don't count on anything, because in independent ball, it may not be that way when you get there. And it started with me showing up at Wacona Park. I didn't believe Brian when he said, you've never seen this place and it's not what you think. I kind of pictured a Bull Durham, like rah atmosphere. And when I got there, it was, it was rough. It was rough.
When scouts from the major leagues come to these ballparks, are they there just because they might be in town, they're stopping over, or are there guys that they 100% unequivocally want to see?
Both. Sometimes, fans see him and, I'll get texts. Hey, did you see a guy behind you? There's a Tigers guy, a scout there. It doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to pluck somebody from the lineup. Sometimes they're just making rounds. Other times they have to do reports on the league, and scouts in a lot of the organizations don't like to do independent work. Others do. If it's a team like the Red Sox and the Yankees, they take a lot of independent guys. But if a team like Seattle that I was involved with, you'll very seldom see them. They don't take a lot. So the scouts feel it's almost a waste of time to go and do these reports because nobody's going to come from there. So I think the interesting thing, so I think both, but we've seen our share of Boulders. I mean, we had over 20 guys over the years get opportunities. So you just never know. It's unpredictable. And if Jamie would, or Kevin would say to me, hey, there's going to be a guy from the Brewers there today, then I'll go talk to him. But sometimes it just happens and you don't even know they're sitting right behind you.
And the challenge with that is, I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 guys over the years who, let's say they're having good seasons, they're batting 330, 340, and then the scout plucks them and they go to affiliated ball. Then your job becomes that much tougher because you got to find somebody to replace them quickly.
And that's the hardest thing is you don't just want to find a guy that's going to most of the players that come to tryouts, I don't care where it is in the Northeast up here, most of them are Band-Aids. They're there. They'll give you a couple days. Then they get exposed. They're going to stop hitting or they're not going to hit at all. That's usually what you say. There are exceptions and there's great stories, but the idea of you finding Jim Morris, who's the rookie, who's, went from, I don't know, chemistry teacher to throwing 95, 96 miles an hour is a pipe dream, and you can't count on that, and you may never see that. Everybody thinks you're going to find a diamond. These aren't diamonds. These are guys you have to dust off and see what are their flaws, and you see them right away. That's why they're here,
Jason, on top of that, Kevin is a full-time history teacher in Lodi.
Oh, goodness.
So he's working 18, 20 hours a day. Kevin, how do you find the time?
God.
I know I have my challenges. How do you find the time?
On a normal school year, it's a tough couple weeks in May. You get used to it by June, but when we get going with camp and, some of the appearances, exhibition games, workouts, stuff that I need to be there for, it's long. Seth's right. I mean, you're going to school, you're normal, whatever. You get out of there 3:00, and now you're going to be at the ballpark till about 8:39 at least, and you're going to have meetings, with Jamie and with Kevin as well. With Les Lancaster was our pitching coach last year. We had a lot of meetings, and those meetings are who do you like so far, what's happening, who definitely has got to go. You get through that stuff, and by the time you get dinner, it's pretty late, or you don't. You just go home and eat a granola bar and start over again.
Oh, how do you not eat dinner? You have a comment here from Chad at Dusler. I could wrong here. Kevin works hard in the baseball world. Much respect.
And Chad, and I'll say this as Chad's been coaching a long time. I had the pleasure of working alongside him. Knows the game really inside and out. A pleasure to work with, just a good guy. And also really understands, he was somebody who really understands a lot of the mental part of it too. Being a college coach, he comes up with things that you would never even think about when he talks about consider this, consider that. And I'll never forget that about Chad, that he was really good at doing that and saying, don't forget this part of it. Don't forget that. And that was something that you don't see a lot with a coach. So hats off to Coach Dusler over there at Dominican College.
Jason, Kevin talks about these dinners. I can't tell you. I mean, I've known Kevin now for 10 years. Kevin, how many late night dinners do you think we've had at Applebee's in Northville after a Boulders game?
Gazillions. I mean, that's the thing too. It's funny. Seth brings up a huge thing, and Seth goes through this too. When you're at the ballpark and you're getting ready for a game, he's there in the morning. He's getting ready to do the game. He's got all the preparation. He's got all the work during the day. And then the game's getting ready, the game day meetings they have. Then we get started. So we're not out of there sometimes. It's 10:30. Seth, you still feel like, yeah, let's do it. And you're turning around and you're coming back the next day. And this is by now, say, whatever, June 18th, 19th. By now, Seth, we'd be a month in and we'd be pretty used to doing that. Now the idea, if it gets going again, is wild to think we're just going to start, in July and get going as if it's May. It's your body has to get used to it.
What do you love most about your job? I know you love it. What do you love most?
I think what I love most is the idea of the competition part of it. Going back to 2014, and bringing up Coach Dusler was involved with this too. When you look at a team like 2014 that won the championship, and some of the other Boulder teams who really a bounce either way, could have went on to win championships. There's at least two of those teams, maybe a couple more that over the last 5-6 years that could have done what that team did. But I guess the idea, in looking back, is the idea that I get to go there and get away from the classroom, 120, high school sophomores, juniors, get away from there for about 5-6 hours and get to the ballpark and be out there. And no matter what the weather is, I get to see those guys. And listen, I'm only a piece of the puzzle, but I just love being there to listen to the stories, to hear what they've seen, what they've heard. the big leaguers, they know, and what it was like. You can't find that anywhere else. You really can't.
I don't think you're a piece of the puzzle. The team's made the playoffs 6 years in a row, and you're a big part of that. So,
oh, thanks, Seth. But you know what? We've been very fortunate to have a lot of great players come through Rockland. I mean, if you think about it, they come into the league in 11 and 14. They already won the championship, so we're definitely due for another one soon. But I will say, going back to the Pittsfield days, really made me appreciate Rockland when I saw that ballpark, and that I get to go there all the time, or got to, and hopefully get to next month. Whatever happens. I mean, I in Pittsfield, it was I couldn't wait to drive up, and I'm smelling that smell of rotten wood hit me as soon as I got out of the unpaved parking lot with the puddles and the mud and everything else. And yet here I am now, going to a place that is just, I mean, it really is one of the best minor league parks that you're going to see in the country still. So, you feel lucky no matter what, and you're not going to make a lot of money, but it's not really about that. As you're hearing with the granola bar stories and everything else.
Aaron's got another question. When you worked for the Pittsfield Suns, did you ever scout the New England Summer College League teams near Pittsfield? Aaron, you gotta this is the longest question ever. North Adams Steeplecats or the Holyoke Blue Sox?
So let me specify that the Pittsfield Suns or the Collegiate League, that came after I was gone. The Pittsfield Colonials, whereas with the team I was with, they were in the Can-Am League for 2 years, okay? Jamie Keefe managed the Pittsfield Suns, who had been the Colonials and Boulders manager now with the High Point Rockers in the Atlantic League. He was with the Pittsfield Suns, so I wasn't actually with them. I know the Steeplecats. We've gotten tryout kids from there even to come down to Rockland once in a while. But, I that's the same ballpark, but a different league. So that is the group, and the name escapes me, but the group that put the Pittsfield Suns out there, really had their act together, and it's a collegiate league. Where I was, it was really bare bones, and they were trying to make something work that didn't work with the Pittsfield Mets or Cubs, and who else was there? Berkshire Black Bears. My God, they lasted like a year or two, and they were gone real quick. So, it's a tough place to make pro ball come, because nobody. I mean, we're playing in front of empty seats. Well, they were. I was in the empty seats, but where the paint actually would come off on my shorts all the time, and I'd have to get new shorts. They'd be red blotches all over me because the paint always came off. It was the stuff. I could go on and on, but it was an adventure. I mean, I'd go up there, and the hotels usually wouldn't take me. As soon as I said Pittsfield Colonials and they checked the credit card, declined. And I'd say, oh man. And I'd try another hotel, and so bills weren't getting paid. It was really an ugly situation, but those players bonded together and really almost won the thing if it wasn't for Quebec. Really.
Perseverance. Kevin, amazing job. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. And I mean, there were things, you and I have had millions of conversations in the last 10 years, and you gave us stuff tonight that we haven't even talked about before. So I think it was a great spot. We appreciate it.
The pleasure's mine. I'm just glad you guys had me on. I love talking baseball. I miss it. Anytime you need to fill a hole, I'm ready to go, because I'd love to come on and talk with you guys, and I really enjoyed it. And thanks, Aaron, for all your questions. They were great. And fellas, have a great rest of the night, and I'll see you soon. And Seth, you take care. I'll be talking to you.
Thanks,
Kevin. Be well. Kevin Tuve, former Mariners scout, director of player development for the Boulders. There's a lot there. There's a lot to it. I think the thing that impresses me most about scouts is how they just know. But he also said sometimes you think you know, and the players are busted, and you have to own it too.
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking Jesus Montero. What happened to that guy? Right? Yeah. He ate a few too many ice cream sandwiches, and that was the end of him. So you don't know. And what I was trying to get at with baseball is you really don't know. There's so many levels you have to get through to get to the major leagues. It is the hardest sport to project. So I have a lot of respect for guys that are willing to put themselves out there, put their name on a player. How many guys don't make it? It's crazy.
Yeah. It's just like playing. You hit 3 out of every 10, you're in the Hall of Fame, and I have a feeling it's the same way with scouting. And here's a guy that's done it at the major league level and wants to spend some more time closer to home. So now he's doing it with the Boulders, and he's been with the team now for almost 10 years. And he does a great job. He's one of the most organized people I've ever met too. So he does a great job.
I mean, you're also become a jack of all trades when you're doing this, right? You're not just a scout. Yeah. You're doing a lot of stuff for the team. He
pulls tarp. Kevin's been out there. He's pulled tarp. He's taken players to airports with me. I mean, it's not easy. It's not an easy gig.
No, I'm glad he spent some time with us today. It was very cool.
Definitely. All right, talking about spending time with us, Diamond Dan.
Dan.
I saw you flash up to the Q monitor before you came on, Dan. That wasn't very welcome.
Sorry, I thought it was Wednesday. Whip it out Wednesday. I got confused. I can't remember what day it is.
I do have my WoW sticker on the side of my desk over here. It's the side that's facing the wall.
I'll tell you, we're talking gambling, horse racing coming back in the United States, and we got some English soccer. Oh my God! We're going to talk about some things. We're going to get back to normal here one of these days.
Right.
But before we get on with it, before Steve wakes up, let's talk about how Kevin is a wealth. Let's talk about how Kevin is a wealth of knowledge, right? I've had a chance to have a beer with that guy at whatever Provident Bank Park, and I don't think I said 5 words in that entire conversation. That man is a genius. And hearing those, I live in Massachusetts and I grew up in New York and Houston, right? And now I get to listen to him talk about those early days in Pittsfield, out in Western Mass. Oh, man, those are the days, right? Those are the days of the Springfield Indians in hockey. And, when they moved the Cape League back to the Cape, who was it that was commenting? Aaron over there was talking about those, collegiate leagues. Like, that's some real basic shit that is very, very interesting. And if, guys that are Stevie's age, don't know about that because they know about the Cape League, but they don't know about like the Western Mass League and all that kind of stuff. See, Aaron knows. I mean, that's very interesting.
Western Mass represent.
Steve, it's my first time meeting you, but apparently you did so good last week in my place. I might as well not have a job anymore. So welcome back.
No, we made it very clear Seth was not canceled last week.
I'm excited to be back. I was saying off air that I wasn't expecting to be invited back so quickly, but there is horse racing this Saturday, so I'm excited. I got some Stono College.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh God, right Oh my God.
Right up your nose. Yeah.
I'm still paying for Ithaca, so you guys are probably on the winning side of that deal. Before we dive into Belmont, let's talk about golf. It's only one round. Poulter at 7 under. He was 90-1 going in. The surprise right now, again, it's only one round. Mark Hubbard tied for the lead at 7 under, 300-1 going in. Do you think he's a serious contender here?
Look, you got a short field here at Harbor Town, right? I mean, it's a beautiful golf course. The public can play it. I have not. I've never been to Hilton Head. I don't know about you, Stevie. But, at plus 4,000, that's a pretty good fucking Thursday bet, on Mark Hubbard. But you got, if you're talking about top 10, if he finishes right now, he's well positioned, right? He's 7 under. If he finishes in the top 10, I think he's at plus like 400. Still good money, right? Like in a short field, these guys are going to perform and they're going to show up. And it's great to see these guys that are playing with professionals you've heard of.
No, Jordan Spieth 5 under, 30-1 going in. DeChambeau 4 under, 16-1 going in. But I'm looking at guys like Michael Thompson, who are a stroke back. Sebastian Munoz, a stroke back too. Ryan Palmer. These guys are 125-1 or higher. Do you think any of them are serious contenders?
Absolutely. It's going to be a great weekend at golf. I mean, think about it. This is the first real sports weekend that we're going to have in a long time. We got NASCAR. We got EPL, English Premier League coming back. Right, we got Bundesliga, we got golf, and of course it falls on Father's Day, a day after my second son was born. He was born on Father's Day, by the way, which was the greatest day in sports history, thanks to 30 for 30 last night, when the Rangers went right down the Canyon of Heroes, and unfortunately the Knicks lost to the Rockets. But now I'm telling you, the NBA is back in big time. So if MLB fails, I'm all in on the Rockets this year. Again, plus 4,000. That's an easy bet for you boys. Just saying. Just saying.
Steve, what's your dark horse in the NBA?
Dark horse in the NBA. I think it would be a good story for the NBA, and if the Bucks can kind of get there and kind of unseat, the Clippers or the Lakers. I mean, one of the biggest things I think from a handicapping perspective is who's going to play, not necessarily the stars, but the role players. I mean, I think the role players are kind of key. Whoever, and especially with kind of all this Kyrie Irving stuff, and if people are going to jump on the bandwagon about not playing. If you're a contender, I feel like you're going to pretty much be out there. But the role players, the Clippers, what makes them so good is that they're so deep. I mean, there are a couple teams that are like that. So I think that's kind of key from a handicapping perspective. Who's coming back, not the stars, but the role players, because, teams are going to be fresh, players are going to be fresh, but it's going to be a grind, especially playoff time when teams start playing defense. So it's kind of who's going to be there when it's most needed.
Steve, I was going to ask you guys. Sorry, Dan.
No.
Handicapping? Is Vegas handicapping who's going to be the next Knicks head coach? Because they're interviewing like 13 or 14 people right now.
What?
Well, they added somebody to the list today. Will Hardy, I believe,
An assistant coach for the Spurs, along with Becky Hammond. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
So, there's a line out there. I'm sure. I haven't. I'm as a Knicks fan, I'm not going to bet. I just want them to pick the right guy, whoever that is. But
I feel like you've said that before, huh?
Not only for the Knicks, for the Jets, the Mets. I mean, all my team.
Conway, how old were you in 1994?
I wasn't born.
Oh, God. Damn.
I was 95.
Oh, man. I mean, that day, if you go back and watch that 30 for 30 that was on last night,
Yeah.
like what a seminal moment in sports, right? While we're now in an environment without sports, but we're talking about it and things are getting positive. I mean, you go through Arnie's last U.S. Open, right? You go through the parade at the Canyon of Heroes for the Rangers. You go through Game 6 at the Garden. Griffey hitting more home runs before whatever it was, the end of June than anyone else. I mean, you just get this like weird. I was in high school, but like you get this feeling. You're like, man, that was a seminal day. And then, of course, 24 years later, my son is born on that day. So obviously, it's a big day in American history.
Yeah, I have. I'll tell you what, I was thinking about it, and I feel like I have more negative sports memories so far in my lifetime than positive.
You're a Jets fan, first of all, right?
Jets fan, Mets, Knicks. I went to school. Being a New York sports fan and going to Stonehill. In my 4 years, the Patriots won the Super Bowl twice. The Sox won the World Series in my freshman year. I remember being in a dorm room. I lived with 12 guys, including myself. 6 of us couldn't stand the Patriots. 6 of them were from Massachusetts. We actually watched that Super Bowl in separate rooms because we couldn't watch it together. The first half, our 6 guys are going crazy and banging on the door, and then obviously it switched. So there's just a lot of negative sports memories. Hopefully we can kind of turn the train around.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into the ponies.
Wait. I've got my lock of the week for Kevin Kisner. Kevin Kisner plus 5,000. He's 4 shots back. Pick Kevin Kisner.
Kevin Kisner it is. All right. Ponies. I know you guys have been hard at work with your pony picks. Belmont, the first time it's been the first leg of a Triple Crown. So this is where I turn over the program to you, Dan and Steve.
All right. Well, I mean, for me, this is weird that Belmont is the third jewel in the crown, right? But this year we get to go first in New York. I am disappointed that we go from 1.5 miles to 1.1 miles. That does favor 'tis the law. There are 10 horses in this race. So, Stevie, give us your take on this.
Well, it's an interesting handicapping situation because not only you mentioned the distance, but there are several horses that would normally be at the top getting a lot of money that aren't running. Nadal, Charlton, Maxfield, forgetting somebody else, but kind of leave yes, it kind of leaves the door open for some other horses. I was listening to a podcast today, and if I get this stat right, every horse in the field, if you put up their stake wins, it measures Tiz the Law. They have the same amount of stake rates, so it's kind of like almost like an inexperienced field. So it's interesting from a handicapping perspective. Tiz the Law is an extremely impressive horse because of how versatile he is. So he'll be tough to beat, but obviously we're gamblers looking to beat the favorites. So, tap it to win. I'm looking at Dan. I don't know who you're looking to put underneath if you're looking to single out Tiz the Law, but I'll place a couple of different bets. But tap it to win is kind of quote unquote my hot horse. The other real quick thing before you chime in is that there are two horses that I'm looking at. One of them being Tap It to Win, another Sol Volante, who've raced in the past 20 days. Sol Volante raced, by the time Saturday comes 10 days ago, and he's another hot horse that will likely take money. So it's interesting all around. But I'm excited. I cannot wait for Saturday.
Me neither. And the thing about Belmont is usually the test of the champion, right? 1.5 miles, and then you cut off that down to 1/8. I mean, this race is going to be about pace, right? Yeah. And I agree. You get on the slottings or on the positions, Tap It to Win is going to be on the rail, and then you got Sole Volante right next to it. So I mean, I like Tap It to Win to set a hot pace at the beginning of the race. It's a matter of whether or not he can keep it up. I mean, Tiz the Law obviously had an amazing performance in the Florida Derby. Finished 4.5, 5 lengths ahead of its competition. Sat back too. That's the other thing. Is that jockey had him back, and then who was it? Velasquez? I don't even know who was it. Oh, it's Tag, right? Or Barkley Tag. Had him sitting back. And he's waiting, and then like when he hit the last turn, he's off and he goes. So I mean, you can't take a 4-5 horse in the Belmont with a short, and nobody like all these dickhead bettors in New York, right? Who were like Matt said last week, sitting at the OTB, chewing on their cigars at 10 o'clock in the morning. You're not going to take a 4-5 or a 5-7 guy. It's just like, how are you going to make it pay? How are you going to get the value out of this race? And I like Tiz the Law, or rather, Tap It to Win on the rail. I think he's fast enough. And then under that, I like Pneumatic coming out of the outside.
Yep.
And then, if you throw in a Pletcher horse with Farmington Road, that's a straight shootout. And it's going to be hot and it's going to be dry at Belmont on Saturday. And anything goes, right? And you're talking, the problem is that the race really is built for Tiz the Law. Yeah. I mean, this is a 1.5 miles, and if we were in normal circumstances, the trainer and the owner and everybody, did everything they had to do to get this horse ready to go for the Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. But things aren't normal, right? So we're talking about exotics. We're talking about funny money here, right? So, I mean, Modernist, you could throw him in there too, coming out of the middle. I don't know. But my trifecta for the day is Tap It to Win, Pneumatic, and Farmington Road. And if you box it, you can make some cash.
Right. What do you have any thoughts on Dr. Post?
I don't like it. I feel like, for some of the stuff I read, he's coming out of what? Where is he?
He's
Dr. Post.
He's very green.
He's coming out of the 9-hole.
Yeah.
Not a lot of races. Not a lot of graded stakes. I don't like it.
Yeah. He's another horse that a lot of people have been talking about. I like your pick, Pneumatic. It just is. I mean, if he's able to. Your
new BFF.
I was going to wear a fedora and
You're going to Vegas, baby. Vegas.
I couldn't make it to Target or
you're just missing brandy and a cigar.
What do you think about Matt's pick?
I don't know. I mean, if you want to go first, but it's the fact that he ran 10 days ago. It's a little. It's kind of like I kind of love it. I kind of obviously you're concerned when you run a horse back that soon, especially on a race of this magnitude.
Okay, and Tap It to Win is going to set the early mile pace, right? Even a quarter mile, whatever it is. He's going to be on the rail. He's going to be inside. That the horses, and that again, another way it sets up for Tiz the Law, right? Because you have a fast horse out front on the rail who's going to be able to, go a short distance, and everyone's going to try to catch up to him, and the jockey can pull off. And I just don't think Soleil can run with him. I don't.
Yeah.
So for the ones that you mentioned, this with Farmington Road, but I'm looking at Max Player, Modern First, Farmington Road, a couple of others that are 15-1 or worse. Steve, if there's one there that you would pick, who would you pick?
Max Player out of those, I guess, but even so, I'm not completely thrilled with him. He hasn't ran since March, I believe.
Right, he can't finish. Max Player, in my opinion, he can't finish.
Yeah,
not finishing is a problem.
Not for me. But, yeah.
Jason was just looking to contribute. That's all.
But I mean, Tiz the Law as a Saratoga horse. We got to, everybody, the New Yorkers, Stevie. I mean, we got to love the New York horse, right? And is he going to be able to run the pace? But I mean, Farmington Road, Todd Pletcher knows how to run these races. That's why I put him in my exotic triple. That's it.
So, question for you, Dan, if I may, and I don't mean to put you on the spot if that's the case, but what I like to do, because I'm still fairly new in handicapping, and I'm definitely wrong at times, is to X out horses I'm just not even gonna use, because oftentimes I kind of go through my first run of the whole card. And I'll, circle a couple horses I like, and then circle back. Well, when I circle back, I've circled like 8 horses. So it's like, I haven't been able to narrow anybody down. So are there any horses that you're just completely throwing out?
The only horse, and I love Jose Ortiz, jockey. He's been in my grandmother's basement before. True story. But 4 left has got to go. I would take him out like that. You just can't, you're in the middle of that pack. You have runners on the inside. You got runners on the outside. How do you manage? I mean, Jose's a smart guy. He's a good jockey. But how do you manage that horse in the middle of that pack? You can't. So I would take him out. Jungle Runner is 50-1. I mean, I've never even heard of Raylo Gutierrez. Like, that's a throw in probably because other horses weren't in there. So if you take the 6 and 7 out, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10. When you get to the first, second turn, those horses come together. You're gonna have a fucking shootout towards the, especially at 1 1/8. You're gonna have a shootout to the finish line, and that's why I like Modernist. I mean, I like Max Player, kinda. But, I think Modernist, Tiz is going to be in the fucking conversation here. And I think Tap It to Win is going to set the pace the whole way around. If it were a longer race, if it were normal June 22nd, different story. But, I mean, I love gambling this shit. I love the talk about it. But I think that Tap It to Win, great pedigree, leads the charge around the corner, maybe doesn't have it. And that's why Pneumatic and Farmington Road are just hanging around. And then, of course, we'll probably get Tiz the Law to blow past everybody, while he's sitting back on the jock. But, I like Modernist too.
Yeah.
Super effective. Really Super it. I don't care. Like, put 50 cents on it. Whatever. It's going to be a shootout.
I love supers. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the distance and then 10-horse field. It sets up perfectly. I'm assuming it's going to be a clean race. I don't see much bumping and kind of, craziness to happen.
It's a beautiful day. It's going to be hot. It's going to be dry. This isn't a 22-horse race at fucking, Churchill, right? This is a 10-horse race in New York, right, at Belmont with no fans. So nobody's throwing beer cans. Nobody's getting stupid, right? There's nobody on the infield. I mean, this is going to be a pure, and you think about it, like all these horses, right, went through the grade 1, went through the grade 2, right? they're all coming up 3-year-olds, right? They have to be 3-year-olds to run in the Belmont, to run in the Preakness, and to run in the Derby. So these horses have been bred to do this shit. So this is going to be without any distractions. No, I mean, it'll be interesting with the blinkers and whatever. There's not going to be craziness. This isn't American Pharaoh. This isn't California Chrome where the owner cries about how long the race is and how mean the fans were. Like, this is going to be a straight up shootout and the best that horse racing has to offer. So if you don't have the Naira Bets app, download it today. Not an endorsement. Yep. Bet the fucking race, because this is going to be fucking fun. And it's going to be on TV immediately after all the English Premier League action on Saturday.
That's the most fired up I've heard you in weeks.
But it's fucking great.
No, this was awesome. This was like the passion of these two guys with the horses just shined through, and they just went at it for like 5 minutes. It was great.
Do you think money hasn't changed hands over the last 3 months? I mean, if you look at how many people I talked to about the Naira app, like I got guys texting me, Jerry and like his buddies and all this other shit in the middle of the day about, betting races in Australia. I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about? They run the other way. I don't even know. It's like you're picking numbers.
Are you surprised Jerry's betting a horse in Australia?
Look, I'm not a psychologist. I don't.
We should have him on. We should have him on.
Personally,
we should have him on next week.
Here you go. Matt's taking 1, 2, 10, a $50 try box. So I mean, if you do that, once again, because I live in the great state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I'm allowed to gamble on horses, right? And you can, Stevie, I assume, in Connecticut.
In Connecticut, yep. Oh, I know it all too well. It's like I said, it's the first tab on my home screen. Now, where are you gonna watch it? How are you gonna watch the race?
So that's funny you ask, because today I just bought an extremely large television to connect to my. So I have 2 kids, right? 6 and 2, and I have to entertain them for the summer now. Okay. So I bought a very large television, and I put a Wi-Fi extender in the back of my house, so I could connect the television in my backyard.
Beautiful.
Attaboy.
So we'll be watching the Belmont in my backyard.
Just for the record, and I thought this was the case, but I just downloaded the Naira app as you were talking. I go into it, state not permitted. God damn it, Texas.
I mean,
why can't you have fun here?
A state that allows you to go into a restaurant during a global pandemic should have wagering on horses.
Did you have any EPL stuff? You mentioned the Premier League.
Oh, well, so the EPL is coming back this week. There's Mrs. Sadowski right there.
Hi, Mrs. Sadowski.
Big time. I'm going to be watching the Crystal Palace game at 2:45 against Bournemouth, away at Bournemouth. There's going to be plenty of games this weekend. If you have the NBC Sports app, watch some soccer this weekend. At least the people that are talking will be speaking English, because they're from the demoralized mother country that we beat all the way back in 1776. But it is entertaining, and this is a sign. This is a sign that we're moving on, right? If Europe can bring sports back, Bundesliga came back June 1st, right? The EPL in the fucking UK is coming back on Saturday, right? Like, there are players, there are unions, there are owners, there are teams. Why can't everybody come together in the United States and put some sports on television?
Because of Rob Manfred. That's why. Rob fucking Manfred.
2 words. Well, 3 words, I guess.
That's why.
So Eric, I have a 10. I bought a 10. We're good. Got the TV. We're going to cover the TV. We're going to watch soccer at 2:45. Then we're going to watch the Belmont. We're going to wager. We're going to win. We're going to win some money. Then we're going to buy another TV. It's going to be awesome.
All right. Very good. Steve, thank
you.
Steve,
give us your weight. Stevie, give us your trifecta for Saturday.
Yeah. All right. Yes.
I'm probably going to do a couple, but I'm going to key Capit to win. Key him in the 1 hole. And then underneath, I'll put Tis the Law. you're kind of making me think about pneumatic a little bit. Dr. Post, Dr. Post, and Sovolante. Sovolante was the other. So I'll probably put Sovolante 3.
Really?
Yeah, Tiz a lot too. So
no box.
Listen, I mean, I'm going to be very busy on the Naira app, so that's just one.
He's going to bet the whole fucking field.
There'll be boxes. There'll be keys.
Love it.
See, the only reason I won't put Tiz the Law in the try is that it kills the payout.
I know.
It's so. I mean, I get it. He's going to win the race, whatever. But like, if you take the exotic, you're going to make some money, right? You want value. Right. We're always talking about value on Grand Central Sports Hub, right, Jason?
We are. Oh, well, based on my heritage, yes.
I'm going Tap It to Win, Pneumatic, Farmington Road. Let's go. Yeah. Let's make some money.
Lock it in.
Gentlemen, thank you. Always a pleasure.
You. Yeah.
Make sure he sees this before he goes.
I love it. Vegas 2021.
Shout out Trillium Brewing, by the way. Shout out Trillium Brewing for the delivery.
So go figure. Jason's coming up north next week. He's coming up north, but yet we're not doing a show next week. Go figure. How about that? But it's the time of year. No, it's the time of year we're in the radio world. Like, it's third quarter. They don't take ratings seriously in third quarter because the air personalities take vacations at this time of year.
Are you calling us a personality?
I guess, well, some of us are. But we're taking off next week. We'll be back the first week in July. We'll take a little bit of a breather.
Yes.
Muskowski, you can't blame me if you don't win. All right. These are remember, this is for educational and entertainment purposes only.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen.
All right, Seth.
We will see you in 2 weeks. Be well. Appreciate the insight.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Anytime.